siblings, because I wanted to be that example for them to, you know, be the best that I could be. And, the grief was still there in my mind. And when I met my husband, um, I couldn't go on. When he asked me to marry him, I had to tell him because I didn't want him to find out after we were married, in case he didn't want to marry me for having an abortion. And the years went by, and he got a job at the time it was Life Issues Institute, and some of the things that they talked about was post-abortion healing. And when I heard that, I thought, wow, other people are regret their abortions, and I thought, wow, I'm not alone. So I went to uh, the healing class, and it helped me to forgive myself and to receive healing. And um, just things progressed from there, and then I got to a point where I was able to talk about what happened in my life to other people who may be thinking of the same things.
And so that led you to, is that what led you to working with Elizabeth's New Life Center?
Yes.
Yes. And what are some of the common situations that you find women coming in and thinking about getting abortions and in some ways that you guys help them?
Well, because I'm not here to talk on behalf of Elizabeth New Life Center, I'll just leave you to search for pregnancy care centers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Uh,
And Reverend, in 2007, you co-founded the organization Protecting Black Life. Was this your first work in the pro-life movement, and was there a specific event that inspired you to take action?
Wow, that's a great question. My family's always been pro-life. I'm old enough to remember when Roe versus Wade was passed in January 20th, 1973, and Walter Cronkite was reporting on that news story. He was almost in tears, saddened by that legislation. So we would talk about those kinds of things in our home, not only from a legislative perspective, but just as far as, how to respect women, my brother and I, how to treat women, how to treat our sisters, in our home and those kinds of things. And it just continued to progress our family molding and raising us up as young citizens in society, if you will. And then when I was a seventh grader, my father was the first African-American pastor in Cincinnati to invite the late Dr. Jack Wilkie to our church to speak. If you don't know who Dr. Wilkie is, I encourage you to Google him. It's spelled Willke, Dr. John C. Wilkie, and they called him Jack Icon. He and his wife, Barbara Wilkie, were like grandparents to me. Not only did I get to meet them in the seventh grade when they spoke at our church, but then fast forward to 2007, which is what you referenced, he hired me at the Life Issues Institute to start an initiative that would reach the Black community on the issue of life. Why the Black community and not just the community at large? Because if you don't know, abortion is the number one killer of Black Americans. You can take all other causes of death combined, heart disease, cancer, accidents, violent crimes, diabetes, add them up together, and they don't come up to the number of Black abortions that occur every day, every week, every month, every year. And as a result, we are the only people group in America that's upside down, meaning that we're leaving this earth, non-abortion related deaths plus abortion related deaths. We're leaving this earth at a faster, greater rate than we're coming here. So we've been pioneering in this work for a very long time, and you heard Sam earlier read kind of some of the things I do, and for me, I'm looking for every opportunity I can to engage people in conversation, life-affirming conversation. So it doesn't matter whether I'm in my pulpit, whether I'm a guest on a podcast, whether I'm, writing articles, which I do, or whether I'm in personal conversation, just engaging people in dialogue. And I just want to share this before I yield the floor. And that is, anybody out there that's really trying to engage people toward life and you're looking for strategies, I just want to leave with you, focus on planting seeds rather than winning arguments. You watch social media and all the bantering and all of the snarkiness and all of that. That doesn't do anything other than just fill up your timeline, right? The goal is to just plant a seed that can potentially, possibly get people to think a little bit differently and lead them to themselves to come to their own conclusion, and then be there as a friend or as a sounding board as they process through what you've shared. But arguing and yelling, that doesn't win the day.
Absolutely. And then just to follow that up, you've also started Breath of Life and the National Black Pro-Life Coalition. What have these organizations done to help the community, and could you share any impactful stories and experiences?
Wow. The National Black Pro-Life Coalition is a national coalition of largely African Americans, not exclusively, but largely African Americans. It's comprised of pastors, educators, college students, high school students, people that are conscientious about life and about the sanctity of life. And we started that years ago there are 7 of us that founded it. Dr. Alveda King, who's a very dear friend of mine, is one of the co-founders along with me of that network. But we're always looking for creative ways to get the message of life out there.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Representative Matthews, could you please explain the amendment that might be on the ballot this November concerning abortion through possibly all 9 months?
Yes. Unfortunately, we are still in the midst of a great political battle. And as the Reverend said, this is one that needs to be won through persuasion. I'm Catholic, and I think it was indicative that the Dobbs decision came out on June 24th, which is the feast of St. John the Baptist, where the 49 years that Dr. John Wilkie and others had been laboring for those 49 years against Roe, in the same way that John the Baptist prepared the way for the next ministry, those 49 years have started where we are now. Now it has returned to the states, and we are on the front lines after the first battery that states like Kentucky, Kansas, and Michigan and Montana have gone through. The amendment that is currently being circulated goes further than Roe. It is, as Sam mentioned, it goes to it states that, yeah, sure, you can put limits after viability, but it says if in the doctor's opinion, it can continue, abortion cannot be prevented for the health or life of the mother, with health, which has generally been considered to include mental health or even economic well-being, which functionally is 9 months. It would ban laws that we passed here in Ohio on parental notification, which have survived challenges under the Roe v. Wade regime. It would ban abortions based on Down syndrome diagnoses, which were challenged under Roe and upheld by the Court of Appeals here in federal court. All of that would go by the wayside. Certain readings of the amendment says there cannot be anything that the state legislature does or the government does to directly or indirectly limit access to abortion. If you would have an incredibly zealous judge that would preclude putting in health regulations on abortion clinics so that we would have more things like Kermit Gosnell out in Philadelphia, where we could not even take the abortion proponents at their word that this is a medical procedure, and we could not regulate it at that level. This is an extreme an amendment, and it has far-reaching effects, and hopefully the people of Ohio can stand against it. So far, we have not been doing a good job of telling the stories, of reaching and persuading to say that this is not what we want. We just saw a poll today that only 28% of Ohioans see that type of freedom on abortion done by, I believe, Marquette University poll. So that is what we are up against. They're currently collecting signatures, and hopefully the people that are pressed to say that, to put this up to vote, say no, this is not what we want in Ohio.
Thank you. And then we had our governor sign a bill, the heartbeat bill as we call
Yes.
it, which will be banning abortion after 6 weeks. But Judge Christian Jenkins from Hamilton County, at first it was only going to be for like a month. He extended that ban to 20 weeks. So is that still in place for up to 20 weeks? And what gave him the jurisdiction as just a judge in Hamilton County to do this for the whole state?
Sure. So yes, the judge in Hamilton County, it's state court can put in an injunction, and if it's a question of general applicability, which means it would apply everywhere in the state, people are not different from Hamilton County to the rest of the state, you can put in an injunction the same way. And especially in this case because not every county has an abortion clinic. So hitting those few that still remain in Ohio, that's why it went to the whole state. It has since been appealed. It is waiting to be heard at the Ohio Supreme Court. They had to appoint another judge because then prosecutor Joe Dieters from Hamilton County was named in the suit, and so he was conflicted out. So they appointed another judge up there for that seat, and we will see how that goes. Attorney General Yost is defending the state of Ohio and its laws. The reason that it went back to 20 weeks is you can only enjoin the law that is in front of you, and that is the heartbeat bill, heartbeat law that was passed. So you take that, you pause that, it doesn't undo the law. Even if the court strikes it down, it doesn't undo it, just pause it from being enforced. Then you go back to the law before that, which is viability, which is the 20 to 21 weeks generally held. I believe that's a weird standard. I don't think that children have more rights because they live next to the Cincinnati Children's NICU versus living in Pike County. But that is what the viability standard looks like. And so while that is being held and going up to the Ohio Supreme Court, we have what the law in Ohio was before the heartbeat bill in effect right now.
Thank you.
Yep.
And did you have, sorry, I thought I saw a hand raised. For the doctors, do you guys know pro-life OBGYNs in Cincinnati area? If so, please share.
You just want their names, or?
I don't know what they want. Okay, we can move on.
I would, I'm not sure, honestly. There aren't any OB-GYNs that participate in the Catholic Medical Association or pro-life activities that I'm super aware of.
Okay.
I don't know if I can usually on it.
Try Google.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to this question. With constant advancements in medical technology, what do you foresee as the future of fertility and abortion in this country, and where do you see this potentially affecting your career as physicians?
Say that again?
So, with advancements in medical technology,
Okay.
what do you foresee as the future of fertility and abortion in this country, and how might that affect your career as physician?
So as technology advances, our ability to do things such as IVF increases. But the question is, just because you can do something, I still think we have to ask ourselves, should we? And there's a lot of opportunities where you can do something outside of the union between a man and a woman to produce a child, such as IVF. But again, the question is, should we? Medical, technological advances in abortion. I mean, right now, you don't even need to go to an abortion physician. You can take medicine that's prescribed at a pharmacy at home, which is, I mean, pretty advanced. I guess you could have a robot that could prescribe it as a future advance, if you consider it such. But how it would affect us.
Yeah, abortion is mostly low-tech now. The abortion pill is the source of more than half of all abortions that are done presently. So abortion is more low-tech. Fertility care is probably going to be more, maybe not in Cincinnati, but in bigger cities where there's more technology, it's going to be leaning more and more towards designer babies. The technology is going to increase to be able to do pre-transfer, pre-fertilization screening for certain chromosomal defects or certain traits that you don't want to pass on to your children. So the idea of designer babies, I think, might become more prevalent as technology increases, which is really kind of sinister when you think about it. I think it's going to probably create more and more demand for that, and that will probably create more and more of the what are called, I guess, the snowflake babies, the ones that are frozen embryos that are in this kind of weird limbo of being frozen embryos and not being implanted. So they're human beings in the embryonic stage that's in cryopreservation. So I think that's a real foreseeable future, but I'm not sure what the timeline is for that. Currently in Cincinnati, it's still mostly this kind of the standard IVF and intracytoplasmic injection, where you take the sperm and inject it directly into the egg, and then you fertilize it, in the lab, and then implant it, and that's a typical intra IVF. Does that answer
Yes.
your question?
Yes. Well, hopefully it answered it. These aren't coming from me.
For
the reverend,
any follow-up questions on that before we leave it?
the one thing that I would ask, let's go here.
Yeah, so when you say pre-fertilization screening, what does that look like? What is pre-fertilization screening?
Yeah, so in the lab, they can collect the egg, they can collect the sperm, and they can sift through them for certain genes, basically. And so say if you have very short people in your family, they can, as the technology improves to identify like short genes, you can select out sperm or eggs that might contain short genes or hair color, or, how it would initiate is, certain genetic conditions such as cystic fibrosis. And so it's all done with very good intentions at first, but then it can very quickly be commercialized to make money, which is, quite honestly, that's why IVF exists in the first place, is it's very highly lucrative.
And we have a pretty small crowd today, so feel free, I'm looking through these as they come in, but also, yes, feel free to raise your hand.
Continue the conversation. How would you regulate the design? Personally, I think designer babies are crap. Like, that shouldn't be done.
Not a good idea.
But how would you regulate the industry so that designer babies aren't something that can be sold or profited off of?
I'm not sure you can, once the genie's out of the bottle.
I mean, there is regulation already in the adoption space that you cannot sell children. And so, just making that by a way of analogy, you can always pass laws, and there's always going to be people that skirt laws. But if you have a way that creates a system that says this is not something that's allowed to be insured, This is not something that Medicaid will pay for. This is not something that, on the extremes, you can say this is something that is outside of medical licensure, and if performed, could lead to loss of license. Those are ways that you can regulate that. If there's political will for it or not, but those are ways that you can create carrots and sticks.
Right, and like what Juliana said, just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should. Most people who would come to such technology would have excellent intentions. Husbands and wives that love each other, they want to make their own families, yet they have perhaps a very sinister gene that they can pass on to their children that might kill their children or deform their children or cause pain and suffering. Epidermolysis bullosa, where they have painful blisters, it's a genetic condition. So the desire to do this would probably come from love, but like she said, just because you should do something doesn't mean can do something doesn't mean that you should.
So I just had a question because I studied a little bit in high school. I did read about like CRISPR, if you understand the genetic modification of like trimming out that DNA, so like not RNA, so that way you can get the specified like DNA that you want. So if you make it hereditary like diseases that are passed on, like Tay-Sachs or like. But the thing is, like you said, like a lot of families will want to argue to do it because they're doing it out of love, so that kind of trait can be carried on, or like any other like things that are like passed on throughout their like family like history. So like say something like cancers that's passed on, some breast cancer is genetic. That's a good use of it, but then how do you define the line of like what is right, what's wrong, and how can it be used, and when it should be like you should put your foot down and be like this is kind of past ethical point of use.
It's a very good question. I don't have an answer for that. CRISPR would be kind of the next level of bioengineering children, and I don't have an answer for that too, except that it sounds very dangerous and it has a great potential for misuse. And also, it's very difficult to test. How do you test such an action? How can you be sure that your by deleting a gene or changing a gene, that you're not going to have some unintended consequence that's going to play out in that child's life? You can test it in a mouse, other mammals, but you don't know how it's going to affect, a child in their development and their intelligence or their body afterwards. So it is. I think it's dangerous, and it would require experimentation on people, which I think is something that we recognized in Nazi Germany is not a good thing to do.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question mainly for the doctors and Representative Matthews. So when you're considering abortion laws and the putting certain regulations surrounding time limits and people who can get them in general, locations, everything like that, is there also a consideration surrounding mandating vasectomies if we're considering alternative methods of preventing unwanted pregnancy?
Since that's a legal answer, I think that's a difference in kind. I think that would be, an analogy would be saying vasectomies to hysterectomies. If you're looking on the medical equivalencies, I think that's differently. And we are not looking anywhere on requiring hysterectomies. So I think that's where the analogy falls short. So there's that.
I mean, I think if we look back at history, forced sterilization has actually already occurred in our country. And those who had disabilities, they were forced to be sterilized. And so I don't think, God willing, hopefully we're not headed back there.
I'd like to respond, not from the perspective that they responded, but in answer to your question about the vasectomies. I'm not so much focused on vasectomies as much as I am on men being educated and responsible and doing the right thing. So I and the entities that I'm connected with, which are many, enjoy opportunities to have conversations with men, both young and not so young, about sexual purity, about responsibility, as well as helping men to heal following the abortions, one or more abortions that they've had in their pasts. You know, for every pregnancy, with the exception of Mary, the mother of Jesus, there's always a man involved. So we spend a lot of times having real, live, raw conversations with men and equipping them with tools to do the right things in that regard. If men will pick up the torch on these issues, I know we say it's a woman's issue. I'm talking about sexuality right now. We can get men to harness themselves. We can shut down the abortion industry tomorrow. So that's my perspective.
Yes, ma'am.
I guess it's a question for more for the Reverend Mrs. Why do you think that abortion is such a problem within the Black community specifically? Not necessarily problem for neutral wording. Why do you think that it affects the Black population so extremely?
That's a great question. I appreciate your desire to sanitize the way you ask what you ask, but it is a problem. And if you know anything about Margaret Sanger, who is the founder of Planned Parenthood, originally called the American Birth Control League of America, you really need to Google her. If you've never done it, I encourage you to do it. Her name is spelled just like danger, but with an S. Okay, Sanger. Study her, and I'm gonna give you a documentary to look up. You can look it up on YouTube and watch it for free. It's called Ma'afa, M-A-A-F-A, Ma'afa 21, Black Genocide in 21st Century America. And it will give you the entire sinister plan behind birth control, which quickly morphed into abortions strategy. Margaret Sanger was a racist, she was a eugenicist, and the intention was to reduce and ultimately eliminate the Black population. So when you look at Planned Parenthood's locations, Sam talked about the organization I founded called Protecting Black Life. If you go to protectingblacklife.org, you'll see a Google Analytic map there that showed where the Planned Parenthood surgical abortion facilities operating at that time around this country were located. 80% of them are squarely placed in Black and brown communities. There's a strategy to that. People say, well, you know, they needed more. Who said that we needed more? We need to be convinced to kill our offspring? Is that what we need more? You know, so I encourage you to look up Margaret Sanger and look up Ma'afa, M-A-A-F-A. It's a Swahili word, which means a grave travesty or injustice. Ma'afa 21, Black Genocide in 21st Century America.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. And then, so we could talk about all our different opinions and what we think about abortion specifically, but regardless, there are women, whether it be because men are not picking up the torch or finding themselves in situations where they're scared to have this child, where they don't think they're going to be able to support this child. And so I just want to ask you, Barbara, what are some of the good local resources and institutions that you know of that are helping out these women and a place that they can go to find some support?
Well, there's a large number of pregnancy care resources that are available in many areas of many cities. And then there's also support behind the pregnancy care centers like churches or other organizations that donate to pregnancy care centers. And you can just Google, like your universities, they have different things in place to help pregnant students. There's a lot of help out there. You just have to search for it.
Absolutely.
And pregnancy centers, they work as like a port of entry into community resources. Mm-hmm. So if there's a need and a pregnancy center can't directly give that need, like if it's transportation or food, clothing, diapers, things like that, they will connect them to community resources like caseworkers that can help them get health care and everything they need to take care of the baby.
Yeah, and I also just want to emphasize that there are places for women to go and there are resources to help them in these struggles when we can't get laws passed and things to protect them. We have ways to support.
Sam?
Yes, sir.
Another side of the resources that most pregnancy centers offer, I work with hundreds of them around the nation, as well as some that aren't in America, and most of them offer free post-abortion counseling, right? So like the course that my wife went through, which is peer-led and more often than not biblically based, is tremendously helpful for women and men that suffer from post-abortion trauma. We had a woman in our church some years ago. This isn't the church where I am now, but it's another church I pastored years ago. And you had asked me for a story earlier, and I got off track and forgot. But this woman just had challenges. She was incredibly bright, very articulate, funny, and most people like to be around her for a short period of time. Because she would just, stuff just happened, okay? From moving through jobs to moving through marriages to moving through men. I mean, it was a lot going on in her life. And by the grace of God, I had the presence of mind to really encourage her to seek out some licensed professional counseling, which was beyond my realm of expertise. After a couple of months, she trusted me enough, opened up enough to pursue the counseling. And as the counselor helped her to uncover was the 5 abortions that she had down through the years that she had just stuffed down, like my wife was talking about, stuffing down those emotions that eventually in one way, shape, or form are going to resurface. And once she got the help and the healing and the wholeness that she needed, she was a completely different woman. So, if you're out there or you know somebody that's out there that's had an abortion or two and you see the meltdown that's going on in their life or your life, there is help available.
So I guess a question I have is a lot of people when viewing this issue that are uninformed or whatever might think that this is just people wanting to take power and wanting to control women's bodies. And it's really hard because I know a lot of you up there and I know you personally. I know you love people a lot, and a lot of times people don't see that no, abortion hurts women. We're actually trying to help women by not having abortion. Could any of you speak to that? And I know maybe Reverend, you've worked with a lot of post-abortive people. How do you deal with that?
Wow. When we I'm gonna talk about men. When we talk about men and abortion, I subdivide men into 4 categories. We hear the most about the man that pushes or coerces or pays for the woman to have the abortion. We don't focus much on the other 3 groups. The other 3 groups consist of the man that begged the woman not to have the abortion, who was willing to step up, but he has no legal grounds to stand on, even if he's married to her. Okay? The 3rd group of men are those that get a woman pregnant and never, are never even told that they had the abortion. My wife didn't share that part of her testimony, but she never told the guy. She just went and did what she felt like she needed to do. And then there's the 4th group of men like myself that have never been involved in an abortion, but you're connected with a post-abortive woman in some way. In my case, it's my wife. It could be your daughter, it could be your granddaughter, it could be a young lady on the soccer team you coach, it could be a young woman in your Sunday school. So again, I'm talking about men. Men need to be educated about this issue from an awareness perspective, not from a domination perspective or a manipulation perspective, but so that they have the tools necessary to have a better quality of life as a man. Manhood doesn't equal sexual conquest, like the garbage that we're being told in the locker rooms and on the bus and on social media and all that other, I'm looking at the brothers, and all that other kind of craziness. You know, a real man loves women from the perspective of watching out for them, right? If you're a Christ follower, praying for them, you know, seeing how you can be a supportive, encouraging friend, not so you can just get in their pants. And I know that throws you off balance because it's the preacher that's saying that to you, but I'm just dropping a little bit of knowledge.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Adam.
Sure.
Right now we have a Republican governor.
Yes.
We have a Republican supermajority in the House and in the Ohio Senate. Why is abortion still legal in Ohio?
Well, we have the 6-month heartbeat, the 6-week heartbeat bill that we passed that protects children up to once there's a detectable heartbeat, other than for the life of the mother. And as we heard earlier, again, you work to deliver the child, protect, save them both, and you have the principle of double effect as you're treating them for medically. Politically, that's probably as far as the people of Ohio have gone, and we've had that ratified throughout. Governor DeWine, like you said, signed the heartbeat bill, and there's no such thing, there's complaints about gerrymandering, there's no such thing as a gerrymandered state unless we're going to relitigate the Toledo War with Michigan. These are the borders of our state, and Governor DeWine won by over 25% after passing the heartbeat bill. The Supreme Court justices, all 3 won. So at the point now of the heartbeat bill, we can't control all of the other elected judges along the way. That's about as far as we are. I believe there may be some Republicans that they've been checking pro-life on their boxes as they run for campaigns and had the cover of Roe as something saying, yes, I can say these things, but never have to act upon them. We are now in a new stage that we are called to step up, to live on the principles that we're here for, and act upon them. And as we watch through the courts, as we prepare for this November election, that hopefully the people of Ohio see that this is too extreme of a bill to put on the ballot, we can see what we can do. Right now, you mentioned the Republican supermajority. One of the top 12 bills we're working on is, they're calling it the 1,000 Days Bill, which from conception through 1,000 days of life, we support the mother, children, and the families that are there with the state. Ohio already has, many red states are following our lead, but to expand Medicaid to cover post-term women for the first year of life of the child. Mississippi just did the same thing. Many other states are doing the same thing. If we're going to support these women, they can't be falling through the cracks. Unfortunately, I would love to live in a perfect world. We don't live in perfect yet. We don't have those men stepping up yet. We don't have the churches stepping up yet. We don't have enough pregnancy centers. We don't have enough out there. And so if that's what's necessary for women to have these children, we should own up to that. And the state needs to step up, especially when we have extra billions that we've collected to use to save and protect these women and children and create an Ohio that can be good for them. I hope that answered the question.
Yes, thank you. I saw an interesting one on here. This one can go to anyone. It has Reverend and Representative Matthews on here, but do you believe you have the right to tell women what they should do with their bodies? What gives you the high ground? If not, why do you feel you can support banning abortions, fully taking away individuals' life decisions?
I'll start it out. I do believe we have the right to encourage people to do positive things, but making them do it, that's another thing. I mean, I have the right to tell you not to step out in traffic, and I know that there's detrimental impact of the cars and the speed at which they're traveling. So I have a responsibility, but to try to force you? No, not to force you. So what we focus on at the Douglas Leadership Institute and the Breath of Life Foundation is really appealing to the hearts and minds of people concerning this. It is my heart's desire. I don't apologize. I don't flinch that we desire to see abortion unthinkable in our nation. We can do better than this. And I know we use the term abortion, which is a euphemism. A euphemism is a word that sanitizes what the word really means. It's really killing our offspring in the womb. That's what it is. And if you've ever looked at an abortion procedure, I encourage you to Google that also. You'll see that it's one of the most barbaric procedures out there. There are many folks, and I work with a lot of pastors, educating and equipping them to speak out, to stand up for life. And many people get trapped up in the, I'm privately, I'm personally pro-life, but I'm publicly okay with people, doing whatever they want to do. That's ridiculous. If this building is on fire, and I'm privately, anti-fire. So I'm gonna get out the bed. I want to add some humor because y'all looking at me all serious. I'm anti-fire, so I'm gonna run out the building, but I'm gonna leave my wife in here because I believe she ought to have the right to choose. I mean, I know that sounds silly to you, but it's a similar kind of dynamic. I mean, the impact of abortion, and she can tell you better than I can how that haunts you for decades. There are many women who have never been able to have children again after the abortions, particularly with the way they're performed in many of the abortuaries around the nation. There are people performing abortion. This isn't hyperbole. This isn't conjecture. There are people performing abortions in the abortuaries of our nation that aren't even doctors. Okay, so we talk about this is between a woman and her doctor. That's hogwash. So, one of the things that and then I'm going to toss it to you. Sure. One of the things that I'm so excited about is, and I just want to encourage those that are in the room. I like you too. I read lips very well. But I want to encourage those of you that are standing up for life, and I know you feel outnumbered, you feel outdone. I want to encourage you to just continue to engage people in calm, loving, level-headed, statistically corroborated, scripturally founded truth about this issue. And again, your focus is sowing seeds and not winning arguments. We now at the Douglas Leadership Institute have 1,000 black pastors because we're trying to reverse the curse of Margaret Sanger, who are educating their congregations, ministering to the post-abortive congregants in their churches, ministering to the young people who are saving themselves for sex to help them to realize that virginity really is one of the coolest things out there, right? You're not a freak, you're not a weirdo, you're not a punk, because you ain't getting none. That's a trick of the enemy. Think about all the baggage that it brings when you get into sexual activity before marriage. It's not God's best. So I'm gonna stop there because I'm preaching, but you do have a preacher on the panel.
That's good. So first off, I'm very grateful to be here at Miami University, yes, where you're told that ad hominem attacks are logical fallacies, and that saying, because of who's speaking the truth determines the value of the truth or not. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's the case really anywhere. We don't look at that anywhere else in the law. We don't say that only millionaires should set the tax rate for millionaires. All of us can look and have a vote and decide on what type of tax policy affects everyone. That being said, if we wanted to play that game, there were 0 women that were on the majority for the Roe v. Wade decision, and Justice Amy Barrett was on the Dobbs decision. So it's 1-0 in favor of that. So we can just end the discussion there. As the pastor was saying, we pass laws that put regulations elsewhere for good reason. To steelman the abortion argument, there's really 2 ways you can go at it on a philosophical ground. That you assume it's innocent life, and it's bad to take innocent life, and therefore you should not have abortion. The science argument is whether it's innocent life and if it's innocent life or not. And we can pass that to the doctors on all the reasons that this is a distinct life, that you can do blood tests that very early to say this is a male or female fetus. And I will still hold that you cannot be both male and female at the same time. So that is a distinct life. But past that, so you take that to the other strong. The argument that's now coming is one of bodily autonomy. That says, therefore, you know what, it's fine to take innocent life if it's encroaching upon the body. We don't allow that anywhere else in the law. The only time that we allow violence against another is for self-defense. We have the Castle Doctrine, we have things like that. If I invite you into my house and you don't leave, I can't shoot you. The reason that we have Castle Doctrine, the reason that we have Stand Your Ground, the reason that you can use deadly force in the middle of the night if someone breaks into you is because you do not know what they are there to do. You do not know the ill intent. You do not know that. It's not that they're there to steal from you. If that were broken out by itself, if someone steals your credit card and takes your bank account, you cannot use deadly force upon them. The reason that deadly force is allowable is because of the danger to you as a person in the middle of the night or otherwise. So we do pass laws. We have speed limits. And it may seem something boring, but a speed limit is a moral law. A speed limit says that your desire to go this speed, we say is not as important. So you being late to your meeting, you missing whatever, is less important to us as a society than the risk, the percentage risk increase to you, the other people in the road, and the pedestrians around it. That is a moral decision, and it is a balancing act. And we do that.
And seatbelt laws.
And seatbelt laws as well.
Mm.
Like they are, like,
It's the interest of the state to not have orphans because mom and dad didn't buckle a seatbelt, but their babies are strapped in.
right. And so down to everything is a moral law. Some of them are random, but why are we on the right side of the road or the left side of the road? Well, it's the right side, and the Brits are wrong. But other than, but it is still the principle is choosing one that everyone agrees upon is good for public order, and that is a moral judgment of that, rather than other countries that just say have at it and don't enforce otherwise. So that's that answer.
Thank you. And I just want to say, we do plan to go until 8:15. So if you guys have any more questions. Yes, ma'am.
So this is for everybody. If you were trying to activate your pro-life community in Ohio to save not just the babies, but the women, what would you say to us? How could you activate, into action? We need the church, the pro-life community, we need action.
Love according to your gifts. If your gift is speaking, advocating, fighting, yes, do that. If your gift is nurturing, go to a pregnancy center, volunteer there. Just being a mom with 7 kids is a very loud statement in advocacy for the value of human life and families. So be active in whatever way that you are gifted and that God is calling you to. That's my answer.
Thank you. And I got an interesting question here.
There's more than one answer, though, I'm sure. It's not the end of the story.
She's looking like, that's it?
I have an interesting question here for the doctors. What would you say to somebody whose OBGYN is encouraging them to go on birth control or get an IUD?
Oh, that's easy. Okay, that's good. Go ahead.
You can start it off.
So it's all about means to an end. So all of those mechanisms. So what's your purpose? Like what's your goal? Like, well, I don't want to become pregnant. Okay, well, how can you achieve that goal? There's lots of different ways you can achieve that goal. You don't have to be sexually active. Well, I'm married. Okay, well, you might want to be sexually active. Achieving that goal through a chemical or a barrier, you have to look at side effects, both, even though the side effects of hormonal contraception are rare, they can be quite severe, like blood clots, strokes, DVTs, and every practicing physician knows at least one person, probably multiple ones, who suffered a DVT or pulmonary embolism or died because they used hormonal contraceptives, which is the most common form of birth control, actually after sterilization. And they had a clotting disorder like factor V Leiden, and they're dead because of their desire to there are better ways to do it. Women in third world countries can learn how to figure out what their bodies are telling them about when they're ovulating. And if your desire is not to have a baby, you can abstain from intercourse during your time of ovulation and not get pregnant with a very high probability of success. So you can achieve the same thing through a much, much safer way, and also a way that allows a woman to really understand what her body is telling her. And they have all the downstream benefits to understanding your body and using naturopathic planning, like how to time your pregnancy. So say you want to be pregnant in the fall because of this reason. You can do that with a much higher degree of probability if you know when you're ovulating, which is what the forms tell you. You can use that information either to avoid or achieve a pregnancy. If you have something that's going wrong with your body, abnormal spotting, if your mucus dries up, you start having irregular menstrual cycles. When you're charting your cycles, you kind of have a clue as to what's going on well in advance of anybody else. And furthermore, when you go to your doctor to explain this is what's going on and this is what I'm concerned about, if you have a chart, you can more effectively kind of show them why you're concerned. Like, this is how my cycle is irregular. This is how my cycle has changed. Like, oh yeah, I can see that. Whereas when you're trying to give like a thumbnail sketch of what's been happening over the past 6 months, it's very, very difficult to explain what a menstrual history is. But if you have a chart, it's much easier.
Pretty
Thank you.
Sorry, I talk all day long. It's just usually one-on-one, not too large groups.
That's good.
Yes, Pete.
Maybe to the doctors, what is the most effective or the best argument you've heard in favor of the morality of abortion, and why is it wrong? Like, what is the most effective one that you've heard, and why?
Say that again. I'm not used to listening to questions like that.
Yeah, so what is the best argument you've heard in favor of abortion, and why is it wrong, or why do you disagree with it?
Oh, I see.
Or this could, anybody can probably answer.
The most compelling.
I don't know. I'm compelling. I don't know.
Maybe what's one that's used most often, or you find most people are convinced by, and why is it wrong?
You look like you're on the edge of your seat over there, Adam.
I mean, I kind of like the case for being pro-life is that the child before birth is an innocent life, an innocent, distinct life, and it is wrong to take innocent, independent lives. Therefore, we should not kill that child. Like, and you can attack either of those elements. Before ultrasounds were common, the first part was the part that was often attacked, that this was not a life, that this was not independent. And independent's a loaded word because none of us are independent. A 2-year-old is not independent. Nursing children are not independent. And other than rare bioethicists, very few people say that you can kill an 18-month-old child. But that has fallen by the wayside because we've seen science, we've seen the ultrasounds, we have the blood tests. So the attack rather is, yes, it's an innocent life, but it's in a place and a manner that I have control over, so it is therefore justified to remove that innocent life. And that is the case of bodily autonomy. And that's the strongest argument. And as I said before, we don't have that anywhere else. If someone trespasses on your land, their car falls over, and they're in your living room, you do not have a right to get rid of them mortally. And so that falls apart, but it falls apart under looking at it past the bumper sticker of my body, my choice, because we don't do that with other things. So, but that is the strongest argument, but we do not have that anywhere else, as I said before, and breaking and entering into your home versus electronic burglary. So,
I did think of something. So if a woman's pregnant with a child that has a congenital malformation or some disease where they know that the child it's not compatible with life. So when they give birth to the child, they will live maybe hours perhaps days, like if their lungs or their heart doesn't develop properly, that would be a reason that someone would say, yes, let's end this pregnancy before the end. And to a natural delivery. And to that, I would say that you're missing an opportunity for being with your child. And I think that I would worry that if you made such a decision that you would regret it later for not having the opportunity to let it happen in a natural way. When you take action, sometimes you're complicit in something. When you let something happen, you never have any voice in the back of your head saying, I had some role in this. But then you have the opportunity to be with your child at the very end, say your goodbyes, and to experience death in a very natural way. Death is a natural part of life. But causing death, you don't have to raise your hand, but I would challenge to say, has anybody actually killed a living thing? A mammal, a cat, a dog? Unless you're on a farm. So if you're on a farm, where you slaughter, we don't have any experience with actually killing something. There was a deer that was hit as I was on my way someplace, and I called the cops to come in, and I called the animal control, and they sent the cops because it was the weekend, and the sheriff came and he shot the deer because its back legs were broken, and that was very disturbing for me. And when I was your age, well, not quite your age, but a little bit older than you, I was running codes in hospitals, trying to save people's lives. I was delivering babies. I was with people when they were dying. These are profound experiences that affect you deep down. You can't be a part of life or death and it not affect you in some way. To have a part in something else's death, I don't know. I think you're foolish if you think that won't affect you. Even when the child has a situation that isn't compatible with life, to cause their death prematurely, I think is kind of dangerous for your own psychology.
There was a study that looked at women who had children who died shortly after. And they asked them, they said, given the opportunity, knowing what you know now, would you have aborted them knowing they wouldn't live, a long time? And again, I don't know the sample size, but all the women said, even though it was a hard experience, it was a worthwhile experience. Because, like you said, time, even though it is very short, that time is still a life-giving experience, and it dramatically affected them in a positive way. It actually helped them heal because they were able to have a closure that I see women who have miscarriages often don't, because they don't know how they're supposed to feel. And I think because there is this lie that it's not a baby, it's not a human, a lot of women feel guilty for feeling bad. And so, to use your word, they stuff it down. And it amazes me when I'll just be taking a history, just finding out, when I meet a patient and it'll come up that they've had a miscarriage. And they'll tear up and they'll apologize.
She had one more question that she wanted to ask.
Yeah.
Sure. Did you want to ask your question before you leave?
No, I'm good. Thank you. Have a good one.
I just want to ask one last question for you, Reverend. We've been talking a lot about the social aspects and the physical aspects and the moral and ethical aspects of abortion. Is there some sort of spiritual battle going on with the abortion situation in the United States?
There's absolutely a spiritual battle going on. Anytime you have forces, some we can see and some you can't see. I don't know what your faith perspectives are, but there's a spiritual battle, and even if you're students of the Bible, you see that battle against life going on from beginning to end. I mean, you can go all the way to the beginning of the Bible with the birth of Moses and Pharaoh's death decree, to kill the boys 2 years old and under in Exodus chapter 1. The Hebrew midwives, Shiphrah and Puah, would not commit infanticide at the birthing stool. And you can go all the way up to the New Testament, Jesus' birth, where Herod had the same kind of death decree. Many of us in this pro-life movement believe it's the same spirits, if you will, at work behind to even convince somebody that it's okay to end the life in the womb or even out of the womb, because it doesn't just stop in the womb. You know, we've got major euthanasia issues, you know, and people wanting to impose their views on a person at the other end of the circle of life. So, you know, yeah, there's definitely spiritual things going on. You know, God is the creator of life. And I don't believe, based on the word of God, not just my opinion, we don't have the authority to, we're not the creator. Even when you procreate with your spouse and there's life produced, there's a baby. I got a beautiful 1-week-old grandson that I started to put a picture up on the screen, but y'all ain't ready for that level of cuteness. You know, you're not the creator. You know, at best, you're little c. You know, he's the big C creator. He created life, and he's the only one that can take life. And I listen to a lot of and read a lot of the research and things, even when we were talking about designer babies. I'm like, what is this, Frankenstein or something? I mean, the level of audacity, you know, that we see, not just in the medical community, but across the board, you know. And if I shift gears for a moment and we get into even video games and things or horror movies. Now, I know you might say, okay, Pastor, you've taken a left turn, but I'm talking about desensitizing and how powerful desensitizing is, you know, for you to play Call of Action and you're enjoying, you know, seeing that person's head splat, you know, as you shoot them on the game. I see people chuckling around the room, but you have to understand that begins to desensitize you. So now as we're talking about ending the life of a baby in the womb, you know, that's nothing. You know, so I think we really need to all not just pound on our own personal perspectives and opinions, but really step back and ask ourselves when we leave tonight, where am I really on this issue? You know, am I just privately pro-life, like I said about the fire, you know, or am I really publicly pro-life? And that means you're going to take some hits, you're going to be laughed at, you're going to be talked about. You know, people are going to avoid you on campus. You know, you're going to be the weirdo. I'm just telling you, you will, but it's worth it, you know, to stand up for life. And I'm glad. The late President Ronald Reagan said, everybody arguing for abortion has already been safely born alive. You know what I'm saying? So it's my prayer that more people that were granted the gift of life would be advocates of life at all stages, from womb to tomb.
Thank you very much. Thank you guys all very much. Well, we really appreciate you guys all coming out tonight. If you have any questions, if you want to get involved with Students for Life, I'm the president of Students for Life. Please come talk to me. I saw something on Yik Yak the other day, and somebody said, you know, I was neutral on campus until the pro-life students were all over the place, and now I'm pro-choice. And you know what? I would rather you come up to me at a tabling event and tell me about why you believe you're pro-choice than to just say you're neutral. So I really encourage you guys to make a decision on this topic, because if babies are being killed, there's something we have to do about it. And if we're just tearing down women and taking away their rights, something needs to be done about that too. So I encourage you to take a stance on this position. The panel, so many smart people on a panel, I wish we could have given them all the opportunity to talk for the entire hour. But they're kind enough to stick around for about a half hour. If you guys want to come up and ask some questions you weren't able to ask, or just ask some questions that you didn't want to ask in public, feel free to do that. But thank you guys so much for coming out tonight, and have a good night.